He washed the feet of the man who would betray him. He bled before the first wound was ever struck, and in the end he was sold for the price of a slave. But what really happened in his final hours will change everything you think you know. Have you ever stared directly into the eyes of someone you knew without a single doubt would betray you? Someone who would trade your life for the cheapest possible price. And yet, instead of exposing them, instead of condemning them, you slowly kneel down and wash the dirt from their feet with your own hands. That feeling is beyond disturbing. It is unnatural. It shatters every known law of human instinct, psychology, and survival. Betrayal has never taken on a form so cold, so precise, so terrifying. And yet the way it is answered here does not follow logic. It overturns the very structure of reality itself. Welcome to Grace and Light. If you have ever wrestled with questions about human nature, about the thin line between light and darkness, between ultimate sacrifice and bottomless greed, then stay with me. Because tonight we are stepping beyond stained glass windows, beyond the polished illusions of religious tradition, and into a suffocating, dimly lit room in first century Jerusalem. No glory, no golden halos, no divine glow, only reality. The air is thick, almost suffocating. You can smell it. Dust from the roads, stale bread without yeast, strong, bitter wine, and the most honest scent of all, human sweat. Men who have walked miles through uncertainty, fear, and exhaustion now sit together in this cramped room. And in that moment, an invisible countdown begins. A clock not made of gears, but of destiny, ticking, louder, closer. The moment of blood, of betrayal, of death is approaching. Outside the window, the darkness is not just nightfall. It feels alive, like something waiting, watching, ready to consume the last flicker of light. And then, in the very center of this unbearable tension, something happens. Something impossible. Jesus rises quietly. He removes his outer garment, wraps a rough cloth around his waist, pours water into a worn clay basin, and then he kneels to wash their feet. In that time, in that world, this was not kindness, it was humiliation. The roads of Jerusalem were filthy, covered in mud, waste, and decay. To touch someone's feet was to touch the lowest form of human existence. This was a task reserved for slaves. Not just any slaves, the lowest of them, foreigners, outcasts, and yet he does it for each of them, one by one. But then everything stops. The moment freezes because now he is kneeling in front of Judas. He takes the feet of the one he knows will betray him within hours. The same feet that will soon walk into the night, leading soldiers, weapons, death. Put yourself there, inside that moment, inside his chest. Jesus is not naive. He knows everything, every thought, every intention, every shadow in Judas' heart. And yet his hands do not pull away. They do not tremble in anger. They do not resist. Instead, they serve. This is not weakness. This is not submission. This is something far more terrifying. It is a silent, deafening declaration. Even if you betray me, even if you destroy me, I will love you until my last breath. And then the price of betrayal appears. 30 pieces of silver, not random, not symbolic, precise, cold. Because in ancient law, that was the exact price of a slave's life. Judas didn't just betray Jesus, he reduced him, measured him, weighed him, and priced him as the lowest form of human existence. But before you judge Judas, pause, because Judas is not history, he is a mirror. We no longer throw silver coins across temple floors, but we betray each other every day for money, for status, for power, for influence, for validation, for attention, for illusion. Judas was trusted. He held the money. He was close. But corruption never begins with one act. It begins quietly. A compromise, a doubt, a thought, and then Slowly, it consumes everything. Back in that room, Jesus breaks the bread, pours the wine, offering himself completely, while in the shadows, Judas stands, silently. He turns away from the light, walks toward the door, opens it, and steps into darkness. The door slams shut, and the countdown accelerates. The light has been left behind, and the darkness has begun. The sound of the wooden door slamming shut behind Judas did more than seal the room of farewell. It opened a blood-soaked path leading straight into the Garden of Gethsemane. The night grew unnaturally heavy. The air itself felt thick, pressing against the lungs, carrying the chill of Judea's hills. But the coldest presence in that moment was not the wind. It was the crushing isolation of a soul standing at the edge of humanity's deepest abyss. Gethsemane, meaning oil press. And here, the human spirit of Jesus was being crushed, not by soldiers, not by weapons, but by the weight of what was to come. Gone were the crowds, gone were the miracles, gone was the glory. Now there was only a man, alone, facing unimaginable suffering. Jesus fell to the ground, his fingers dug into the roots of ancient olive trees. His breathing became strained, his body trembled, and then something happened, something so rare, so extreme, that modern medicine barely recognizes it. His sweat became blood, hematidrosis, a condition triggered only under the most intense psychological stress, when capillaries rupture under pressure and blood seeps through sweat glands. Before a single whip struck his body, he was already bleeding from fear, from anguish, from the unbearable weight of humanity's darkness. And in that moment he prayed, "Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me." This was not weakness. This was humanity, a desperate longing to live, a final resistance against pain. But then came the surrender. Yet not as I will, but as you will. And still, he was not alone, not entirely. Just a short distance away, Peter, James, John, the closest, the strongest, the most trusted. And they were asleep. 3 times he returned. 3 times he found them resting, unaware, disconnected. Not out of cruelty, but out of human weakness, exhaustion, fear, avoidance, and perhaps denial. Because sometimes the greatest pain is not being attacked by enemies, but being abandoned by those closest to you in your most critical moment. And then the darkness moved. Torches pierced through the night. Footsteps, metal, voices, a mob, armed soldiers. And at the front, Judas. He stepped forward slowly, not with a weapon, but with something far more dangerous. A kiss, the symbol of love, of loyalty, of brotherhood, now twisted into a signal of death. As his lips touched the cheek of Jesus, it marked the moment betrayal became irreversible. But Jesus did not step back. He did not resist. He looked directly into Judas's eyes and said, "Friend, do what you came for." Not sarcasm, not anger, but acceptance, total, complete. And around them, chaos erupted. Peter drew his sword, struck wildly, severed the ear of a servant. Violence met violence, fear met fear. But Jesus did something no one expected. He healed the man, the very man who came to arrest him. Even now, he chose restoration over retaliation. Love over instinct. And then the ropes came. His hands were bound, his freedom taken. And as he was led away, the garden fell silent. The darkness had done its work. But in that silence, a greater victory had already begun. Because he did not lose control, he surrendered it. And in that surrender, he conquered the greatest battle of all, the battle within. The moment the kiss of betrayal ended, the darkness of Gethsemane gave way to something even more disturbing, the machinery of injustice. Jesus was no longer just a man being arrested. He was about to be judged by fear, by power, and by human weakness. Dragged through the night, bound with rough ropes, He was brought before the religious authorities, the very men who claimed to guard truth. But truth was not what they sought. They searched desperately for witnesses, not to reveal reality, but to distort it. False testimonies echoed through the chamber, voices overlapped, accusations clashed, nothing aligned, nothing made sense. Yet, the verdict had already been decided, because this was never a trial. It was a performance, a carefully orchestrated execution of truth itself. Their robes were clean, their voices authoritative, but inside, there was rot, jealousy, fear of losing power. Jesus stood silent. He did not defend himself. He did not argue, because sometimes truth does not need to shout. It simply stands while lies exhaust themselves. But the deeper tragedy unfolded outside. In the cold courtyard, under flickering firelight, Peter stood trembling. The one who had sworn loyalty unto death now faced a simple question: do you know him? And fear answered before truth could. No. Once, twice, 3 times. Each denial cutting deeper than any whip. And then a sound, a rooster crowing, sharp, unforgiving, and in that instant, their eyes met. Across distance, across chaos, Jesus looked at Peter, not with anger, not with condemnation, but with a sorrow so deep it shattered him. Peter turned and fled into the night, weeping, because sometimes the greatest pain is not failure, but realizing who you became in your weakest moment. Morning came, and with it, Rome. Pontius Pilate, a man of authority, power, control, and yet terrified. He saw it clearly. This man was innocent. There was no crime, no threat, no reason for death. But the crowd, they wanted blood. Their voices rose like a storm. Crucify him! And Pilate stood at the crossroads of truth and survival, to protect justice or to protect himself. And like so many before him and after him, he chose himself. He called for water, washed his hands before the crowd, a symbolic act, a lie, because no water can cleanse a decision made in fear. No ritual can erase responsibility. The sentence was passed, and then the brutality began. Jesus was tied to a stone pillar, his back exposed, defenseless. Roman soldiers stepped forward, holding whips embedded with bone and metal. They struck, once, twice, again and again, each lash tearing flesh, each blow ripping deeper. Blood covered the ground, his body collapsing, yet forced upright. Pain beyond imagination, not just to punish, but to destroy, to erase dignity, to break identity. And still he endured. They mocked him, placed a torn purple robe on his shredded back, forced a crown of thorns onto his head, sharp spikes piercing skin, blood running down his face. They knelt before him in cruel imitation, "Hail, King of the Jews!" Laughter, spitting, humiliation, and outside the crowd roared louder, demanding death, choosing a criminal over an innocent man, because truth is often inconvenient, and crowds rarely seek truth. They seek confirmation and violence, and so the verdict was sealed, not by evidence, but by fear, by pressure, by silence, by cowardice, and the path to Golgotha had begun. The trail of blood did not stop at the court. It stretched forward through the streets, across stone and dust, leading to a place that history would never forget. Golgotha, the place of the skull. Under a scorching sky, Jesus was forced to carry the cross, rough, heavy, merciless. Every step was a collapse waiting to happen. His body, already torn apart by the scourging, could barely sustain its own weight, yet now it bore the weight of something far greater. Not just wood, but the weight of humanity itself. Each step forward was not just movement, it was endurance, it was surrender, it was purpose. He stumbled, fell, hit the ground hard, the cross crashing down beside him, dust rising into the air, sticking to blood and sweat. And still, they forced him up again, because this was not just execution. This was humiliation, public, visible, designed to break not just the body, but the identity. When they reached Golgotha, there was no ceremony, no dignity, only violence. They threw him onto the cross, stretched his arms, and then the hammer. A single strike echoed through the air. The nail tore through flesh, nerves, and bone. Pain shot through his entire body like fire. Another strike, another nail. Feet pinned, body fixed, no escape, no relief. And then the cross was lifted, dropped violently into the ground, his body hanging. Every breath became a battle, because crucifixion does not kill quickly. It suffocates. To breathe, he had to push himself up against the nails, against torn flesh, against unbearable pain, then collapse again, over and over until strength was gone. Below him, voices, mockery, laughter, religious leaders sneering. He saved others. Let him save himself, but they did not understand. The nails did not hold him there. Love did, a power stronger than pain, stronger than death. And in the midst of that agony, he spoke, "Father, forgive them." No hatred, no revenge, only mercy, even now. Even here. But the darkness had not yet reached its peak. Suddenly, the sky turned black at noon. Light disappeared. The world itself seemed to hold its breath, because something deeper was happening, something unseen, something beyond human understanding. Jesus cried out, "My God, why have you forsaken me?" This was not physical pain. This was separation. Absolute. Total. The weight of sin. The distance from the source of life itself. A silence deeper than death. And then one final breath. It is finished. Not defeat. Completion. Purpose fulfilled. He gave up his spirit, and the earth responded. The ground shook, rocks split apart. Inside the temple, the veil was torn in two, from top to bottom. The barrier between God and man destroyed forever. The body hung still. The sky remained dark, but something had changed, something irreversible. Death had taken its shot, but it did not win. Silence. After the final breath, after the darkness, after the earth itself trembled, everything seemed to stop. The body of Jesus, broken, lifeless, was taken down from the cross, carefully, gently, wrapped in linen, covered in myrrh and aloes, placed inside a tomb carved into stone. A massive rock was rolled across the entrance, sealed, guarded, final, or so it seemed, because to the world this was the end. Hope had been buried. The disciples scattered, fear took over, faith collapsed. And the silence of that Sabbath day felt heavier than death itself. But silence is not always the absence of movement. Sometimes it is preparation. Before dawn on the first day of the week, something shifted. The earth did not announce it, the sky did not warn it, but heaven moved. A violent tremor. The stone rolled away, not by human hands, but by something far greater. The guards fell, paralyzed by fear, like dead men. And when the women arrived, Mary Magdalene among them, they expected death, they expected decay, they expected finality. Instead, they found nothing. No body, no remains, only linen, folded, empty. And a message that would echo across history. Why do you seek the living among the dead? He is not here. He has risen. This was not just a miracle. This was a reversal, a declaration, a rewriting of reality itself. Because death, the ultimate authority, had been challenged and defeated. Jesus stepped out of the tomb, not as a victim, but as victory. The scars remained, the wounds were visible, but they no longer defined him. They testified to what had been overcome. And in that moment, everything changed. Death was no longer the end. Darkness was no longer permanent. Despair was no longer final, because the tomb was empty, and the light had returned. But this story is not just history, it is a mirror, because within every human being there is a tomb, a place where hope was buried, where dreams died, where identity was lost. And yet, The same truth remains. No stone is too heavy. No darkness is too deep. No ending is truly final. Because resurrection is not just an event. It is a possibility, a choice, a transformation. So when you stand in your own darkness, when everything feels sealed, finished, remember this. The stone can move, the light can return, and what seems dead can rise again. The journey concluded from darkness to light. The path from the quiet agony of Gethsemane to the blood-soaked hill of Golgotha and finally to the empty tomb is not just a story. It is the greatest narrative ever told about love, sacrifice, and redemption. It is not only the story of a savior carrying the weight of humanity, it is also a mirror, a reflection of us. Because within every human heart, there is a Judas capable of betrayal, a Peter capable of fear and denial, a Pilate capable of avoiding responsibility, and a crowd easily influenced, quick to judge, and slow to understand. We are all part of this story. Every day in subtle ways we betray, we deny, we remain silent, we follow the noise. But beyond all the darkness, there is something greater, something that refuses to be destroyed. Love, a love that does not retaliate, a love that does not collapse under pain, a love that forgives even when it is undeserved. And that love changes everything, because the resurrection is not just about overcoming death. It is about proving that no darkness, no failure, no broken past has the final word, the deepest lesson. The greatest lesson from this journey is simple, yet profoundly difficult. Unconditional love and forgiveness are the only forces powerful enough to break the cycle of pain. When faced with betrayal, injustice, and suffering, the natural instinct is to fight back, to protect, to harden. But Jesus chose something else. He chose forgiveness, not because people deserved it, but because love demanded it. Father, forgive them. Those words did not just echo in history. They echo within us. Every time we are hurt, every time we are wronged, forgiveness is not weakness. It is freedom. It is the moment you refuse to let pain define your identity. It is the decision to stop carrying the weight of someone else's darkness. How to apply this in your life. Practice forgiveness, not for them, but for yourself. Let go of resentment, because holding on to anger only imprisons you. Take responsibility. Do not become a modern-day Pilate. Do not wash your hands when facing truth. Stand for what is right, even when it is uncomfortable. Resist the crowd. The world is loud, opinions are everywhere, but truth is rarely found in noise. Think deeply. Choose compassion over judgment. Rise from your own darkness. Everyone has a Golgotha, a moment of loss, failure, pain. But the story does not end there. If the tomb can be empty, then your life can be renewed. What feels like an ending may actually be a beginning. A question for you. In your darkest moment, what helped you hold on? What kept you from giving up? Take a moment. Reflect. And if you feel ready, share your story, because your experience may become someone else's light. If this message has touched something deep within you, if it has awakened even a small spark, then stay with us. Because this is more than content. This is a journey, a return to something real, something alive, something unshakable. And remember, the stone can always be moved, the light can always return, and what was once broken can rise again.